I feel like this has been a long time coming. Already my favorite episode, and we haven't even, said anything yet. But yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedule. I know you're the hardest working person I know, period. So I'm sure we'll get all into that.
Says a
But
lot.
yeah, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. This is freaking awesome.
Yeah.
I've been looking forward to this, and it's just been so busy. You know, you and I have tried to connect a couple of times, but this is like, as soon as you mentioned that you were doing a podcast a while ago, I was like, oh, that would be really cool. And then I'm like, there's no way. He's got such great guests, and it's continued. Like, I've listened to him, and you have such great people. I'm kind of humbled that you considered throwing me on there, but maybe you're just going to grill me and just lay it all wide open. And
Yeah, I mean, I got 32 years of pent up anger and things that I just have never said to your face. So I figured I'd do it, air it all out over the internet.
yeah,
No,
it
I
goes
mean,
both ways.
you're a prime guest. Like there's so many different things that I would love to touch on here. But I think we just start at the beginning. I mean, if people are going to listen to this episode, they're going to listen to this episode, because if they see that my dad's a guest, they're either really curious about it and they're going to want to hear it. I don't think that this is an episode that people are going to stumble across. And if you are stumbling into this episode and listening right now, thank you. And please listen, because it's going to be wonderful. So let's just start at the beginning. I mean, we can go as far into anything as you want. Like, you start at your childhood. Why do you work since you were 17? Why have you been working your entire life?
Well, I'm still looking for a nice break, but it's, I look back and it's been a really wild journey. I don't script a lot of things beforehand and just kind of roll with it. As you know, you've lived in a lot of different places while you were growing up, and sometimes we no real particular reason, but of moving, or going there, other than trying to look for quality of life for you guys, you and your brother and sister, and your mom and I. And so sometimes it seemed like it was on a whim, or it seemed like a crazy idea, but there was always a little something behind it. But you came along early, unexpectedly. Your mom and I were, I can't even remember. I get, maybe it's selective memory, but I can't remember exact dates that are a long time ago, but I do know we were dating for a while, and then we were hitting kind of a rough patch, and we're going to separate, actually, and maybe not see each other anymore. We were just like, I don't know, I was 22 or 23 or something like that. And then we found out we were pregnant. And from, that's an interesting story, that you were actually conceived in the Bermuda Triangle. So it's an interesting side note there, but I'm sure you've heard that story many times.
Just,
doing a yacht delivery back.
All I knew is that you guys thought you were going to die, which I was like, great. So I'm the product of people not thinking they're going to live very long, which is reassuring.
Right. Well, you find out what you do when all the chips are really getting laid down. But that was on a yacht delivery up from the islands to the vineyard, and we hit some pretty gnarly weather, and it was kind of life or death a little bit. Usually I always like to trust in the boat that I'm on, and I didn't really trust the boat at that point. It was really old, and we managed to come through. And then a little while later, we found out we were pregnant with you. So that's how those things happen. So we were undecided. It was unexpected. So we took a couple of weeks apart to figure out whether, we were prepared to have a baby or not. And we decided that we were ready. We would do it. And there you go. Now you're here. So
I mean, I always think about that. That's what blows my mind. It's like, you guys are, I'm 32. Lauren and I just got engaged. We want to have kids, but it's not like, pressing. And I can't imagine being 10 years younger and having a 1-year-old. It's just,
it was pretty wild.
10-year-old right now would just be weird for me, I feel like. But at the same time, there's no option to, right? I mean, you do it, and
yeah, there's no choice. And to me, parenting is, once you decide to be a parent, you let go of everything else. Parenting goes first. And so I think that a lot of people struggle because they want to maintain their freedoms or their, their personal pursuits and this and that. And you have to make those adjustments if you want to be a present parent, and we just knew that we had it in us to make those choices and to be good parents. And we thought that we could work on the relationship, and it almost became like that really, well, it did become secondary at the time, and raising you was primary, and I look back and I I don't regret any of the decisions we made of how we set up our life to raise kids. It was awesome. It worked out really well. But you don't know shit when you're 24. You think you know a lot more than you do.
I mean, at the shit, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I don't know what I'm doing now. I mean, I look back at that's, I think what is why it's such a hard pill to swallow is I think back to that time and I'm like, man, I'm just an idiot when I'm 24. I'm an idiot now, but I was more of one when I was 24. And, you're just doing careless, dumb stuff all the time. And to think that one thing that, I think there's an audio issue here, but one thing that I found, really interesting is growing up, we moved around a ton, but there was also conflict. Like there was moving around as a family, but then there was moving around separately. There was you and mom you're separated and back together and separated and back together. And that kind of seemed like the theme at the time is really frustrating when you're a kid because you don't understand. You haven't lived yet. So you don't get that things are difficult or people have different preferences or interests or arguments or whatever. And you guys are 24. I mean, you didn't know what the hell you were doing. And
Right.
you have these experiences of your parents and you're so upset with them about what's going on. And then when you get older and you get perspective and you're like, wow, they were actually doing a pretty damn good fucking job. They're doing their absolute best. Everyone's doing the best with what they have. But you don't get that perspective when you're a child.
No, and even as the adult in that situation, you don't get to step away and get perspective either. It's interesting, now I'm 7 and I look back and I've been raising kids for 30 years plus, and I look back at that timeline of that time, like when you were really young and we were trying to just keep our shit together and make good decisions and maintain quality life for you guys, like I said. And I was pretty hard on myself then, and I'm a lot nicer to myself now, looking back at that guy.
Why was that?
What's that?
Why was that? Why were you so hard on yourself then?
I just think I'm just driven, and it's how I grew up. Your grandfather, my father, was a real strong disciplinarian, and he had a tremendous drive and work ethic, and that carried over. And I always wanted the best for you guys and for our life, live in a beautiful place and be able to do activities and let you guys do what you needed to do in athletics and school activities and stuff. So providing for that and making the commitment to have a single income so that we always had a parent at home, which we felt was really critical.
Right.
It became even more critical once there was the 3 of you. So and that 7-year separation between you and your brother and sister. So that's why I just kind of the way we set it up is I was the provider financially, and then your mom held down the household and filled in all the other gaps that need to be done to create balance in the relationship if someone's spending 40 or something hours. And as hard as I worked, I committed to not working like weekends. I was always around, as you remember, for all of your events, with maybe rare exception, but it was, that was the commitment that we made, that we were going to be there for you guys for whatever was going on. And so many times people that work hard, they miss those big milestones and the small milestones that really create that continuity in a child's life. Because we also knew that we were doing those disruptive things like moving.
Right.
Like this, it's I mean, I can't even count how many times we moved. You know, we were in Colorado, we've been in the Northwest, we've been in Hawaii, we've been in Taos, we've been, you know,
Yeah.
the vineyard, Martha's Vineyard. It's all for good, you know, for various and good reasons. But that we always maintain that family unit at home, and me as home as much as I could, given that I was out 40 hours a week, give or take, you know.
Right.
So
When
gave
you
you
think
some of
back
that
to
structure.
like your childhood, and you alluded to my grandfather, your dad, this sense of like work ethic. I think a lot about work ethic, and I've been drawn towards. I mean, growing up with you, I always had an example of someone that, like you said, you and mom chose to operate the house a certain way, that she would be at home and you would be the income earner and you would be out working, and the dynamics worked for the family as best as it could. But this concept of a hard worker, good work ethic, I think back to just how much I knew that you were physically working. So like actually physically hands-on doing a job, construction, building homes, a craft that you actually, you know, like do with your hands. And so I always kind of, I think probably cataloged in the back of my head that that's like a manly thing to do. I associated that with like masculinity of being like a fucking like earner, you know, and going out and doing things with your body and working hard. And so I've been obsessed with that. When you think, where did you develop that along the timeline of your childhood, your adolescence? Who did you notice was like that, and what drew you towards that life?
Um, well, I was taught, you know, we didn't have a whole lot when I was a kid. And my parent, both my mom and dad, your grandparents worked really hard to provide for what we had. And I was taught that whatever you put your mind to, you can achieve. You know, you can and never be too proud not to do what's needed to be done. Sometimes it's digging the ditch, sometimes it's being the guy in the office, you know. And so those kinds of principles drove how I developed my and created my work environment. I I didn't I was kind of more of a rebel kid. Like I didn't fit the mold very well.
Why?
Of well, I was like super high energy, and I didn't want to focus on things I wasn't interested in. So like in school, I excelled at things that caught my interest, and I bombed on things, and I didn't read directions. I just did things the way I thought they should be done because I didn't have time to. And so I didn't like just sort of raise my hand, you know, I would just yell out. So it was just a different way of being, and I had to contain that energy somehow. And I knew that I wouldn't when it got as I got older, and I was going to go into like structured school of college. I, I'm like, I'm not cut out for this. I can't. I grew up on a sailboat, and so we had not a very different structure for schooling. You know, it was condensed, so we had so much more life experience, and then specific times to do schooling. Whereas here, it's the other way around. You have so much schooling time and very little life experience because you're jammed in this daycare all day long. You know, through
Right.
grade schools. And then I got to like, should I go into the military and should I go into college? And you know, I'm like, I don't think I want to do this. And
But you
so
were
I
you
didn't
were
have,
close in the military, right?
I signed up and did, you know, I was going to go be a helicopter mechanic in the Marine Corps. And I just wanted that summer after high school before I went into the Marine Corps. So I asked for that, and that's just to buy a little. I wanted to party, you know. I was kind of
Yep.
a party animal, and I wanted to have kind of a last hurrah before I went in and got my head shaved and got smacked into you know, some kind of conformity.
Yep.
And I chose to take that summer to fly out west and ride my bicycle back, and that ended up just being a cleansing journey of what the fuck am I doing with my life kind of thing.
With a bunch of
And
mushrooms that you never took.
Yeah, I bought those on the West Coast and thought that when I got to the Redwoods, I would eat some mushrooms and sit there and look at the stars. And instead, I gave them away when I got to the East Coast, and it was life changing. It was quite a journey. And I came back and I said, I'm not going into the Marine Corps, which your grandma, my mom was like, sweet.
Yeah.
So I didn't go in, and then I went sailing for a while because I knew I didn't want to go to, because I would have to work really hard and I wasn't focused. So it would be like I'd be holding down 3 jobs or whatever, or I'd be given money that would pay for a bunch of things through financial aid, and then I'd fritter it away. I knew I would have. So I said, I'm not doing that.
So what did you do
Plus, I
instead
knew
of?
I excelled. If I focused on something, I would do really well at it. And that's been
Right.
something that's carried through in life, that if you really dial something in, you can do well at it. And I didn't want to have all the other crap that I was required to do along with it. So
Right.
when something catches my eye as an adult and I focus in, a good book or a class or a course or a license I need or whatever, or skill I need to develop, then I go for it. And all of those types things were born out of watching my father. My parents had a dream, of sailing around the world. It was just like something they wanted to do. And they dreamt about it for 12 years. A, they didn't know how to sail. B, they couldn't afford to buy a boat, so they built one. They didn't know how to build one. They had no idea. They learned to sail the summer before we left. And so you just build the boat strong enough to be safe, and away you go, and you trust. And so they showed that you can achieve great things if you just put your mind to it and you put your back into it. Because everything, like, my dad was an artist. He carved signs and eagles and name boards and big, carved signs and gold leaf and things like that, and taught me that you can, don't be afraid to work hard physically.
And I mean,
And
he like to a T built this wooden boat in your yard,
yeah,
right? I mean, based off
out of a book,
prey.
like he took a paperback book and took the lines of the boat out of there and transferred that into this three-dimensional object that we sailed around the world with no engine and no electricity and kerosene lamps and a wood stove to cook on for 6 years,
Was there
and like
was there fear around that at all as a kid when you're about to embark on a boat your dad built with no end
yeah,
plan? Like,
I actually, my parents considered abandoning the voyage after I was deathly seasick the entire way across the Atlantic. When we left Block Island and went to the Azores, which was something like, I don't know, 14, 16 days or something.
ugh,
I I was so afraid that the boat was going to tip over or sink ever, that I was sick the whole time, and I lost a ton of weight and got wicked dehydrated and was really
you were
ill.
sick from the
And
fear, not from
from the
being
fear.
seasick. Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure it started out as being seasick, because even after hundreds of thousands of miles, I don't feel well for a few days, and
Right.
sometimes if it's an ugly sea, then goodbye lunch kind of thing for 3 days, all the time. I can sail around, day sail and sail on big schooners and go 3 or 4 day trips or something. But as soon as you put out to sea, there's something different.
What changes?
I don't know. I think psychologically you just know you're in it for the long haul, and land just sort of disappears, and it's a completely different world and sense of time out there. And it I don't know. It's you I encourage everybody, if you ever get a chance to like sail across an ocean, do it. Get on a boat and go. Provided you trust the captain, you trust the boat. Go
Yeah, I mean,
for it.
what's
It's
it?
like 2 to 3 weeks of your life, and it's the most amazing experience. You lose all sense of time within reason. I mean, you have to do navigation checks at certain amounts of, times of the day, and there's always routines and rituals that you have to maintain during the day. But you got a lot of time between the ears
Mhm.
to read books or to meditate, and just on life and think about things. And it's a pretty cool space. And you can't get that anywhere else on the planet.
I would imagine there's some parallels to biking across the country by yourself in terms of the those long stretches of open road where there's not, I mean, cars passing by, and maybe that's the difference, but it's time alone where you feel how small you
Yeah.
are.
I think, we all should spend more time alone, with ourselves, like truly, not just like going for a walk, but like
Right.
sit with yourself,
Yeah. Yeah.
and look inside and really dig up some, really sort of peel the onion, so to speak, and really look at things. Like I was never very good at that because I was taught, well, the example of my father was of just, he was physically a specimen and he was rugged and he had this big beard and these giant arms and this big chest.
Yep.
And it turns out as an adult, he was shorter than I always imagined him to be. As a kid, he was just this incredibly intimidating figure. And it, 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 it's just interesting to get perspective on that. But it's, I lost track of where I was going with that.
No,
but I
it's
just
funny.
remember that as being.
I think about that too. There's this as a son, and maybe this is unique to like sons and their fathers, but you have this interesting perspective of who your dad is physically when you're a kid because you're so damn little. The world is just much bigger than you are when you're a child, and your
Right.
dad is like this fucking dude, and he's, I mean, in my case, right, like you're strong, you use your body to do your job, you carry yourself, it's like good posture, all these things, and you just kind of, you build this little claymation figure of who your dad is in your mind, and it's larger than life.
Right.
And then as you get older, that you're kind of developing into that, but you don't see it because it's you. And then you stand side by side and you're the same height or something, and it's strange. It's like a evening out of the playing field, but you hold on to that perception still. I still look at you, I still see you as if I'm young looking up at my dad is big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I tap back into where in the question, that exterior, that rough exterior, that gruff exterior, or I carried for a long time in my life through into my 30s and 40s. And it wasn't until then that I realized that maybe I wanted to change that I wanted to not have people, constantly they were saying to your mom, I didn't think Hudson liked me, I didn't. And I don't know, it always came as a surprise to me. I'm like, what? I was so nice. And yet their perception of me was I had this cold exterior, because I was evaluating people to see if they're worth my time and whether I wanted to, waste my time with them. And so I've done a lot of work around that, of softening that up and being more accessible. And, I have a lot of wisdom to share and a lot of things to hear from people. So it goes both ways. And it's a much better if you're able to be a good listener and hear what people have to say, and just be a filter, not have feel you had to stand your ground. Everyone's going through their crap. Everyone has issues and things they're dealing with and things they're working on, and we need to be more compassionate. And that all goes together, of losing that gruff exterior, being more approachable, being softer.
So,
and that's not how I grew up,
where do you think the balance is for that though? Because I think about this a lot too, and I agree. I think it's important to demonstrate emotion. Like, you want to be emotionally available for the people in your life, but you don't want to be soft as baby shit either. Right? Like, there's some benefit to toughness.
Mm-hmm.
How do you navigate? Absolutely. How do you navigate those two things? How do you be emotionally available and present and understanding, and then also not just be a complete pushover and get emotional about every little thing that comes up?
I think everybody has an intricate matrix that makes them up of life experiences and what brought them to the moment that is like right now here.
Right.
And so how they're gonna react to, we're all gonna infinitely, we're all gonna react to a particular moment differently. If we were all plunked into that particular moment, if you could do that, if you took 15 people, they would all react differently based on their whole makeup to that moment. But I think, being a man in today's world is really interesting. I think we got kind of lost in the 80s and 90s. It was like, it was just a weird mix of losing that aggressive male dominant kind of behavior, and the pendulum swung way too far. And I was in the Northwest, and it was a really wild time, but of self-discovery. And I think a lot of men got lost during that time as far as where they stood in that, finding that balance, that line of hanging on to strength and masculinity and the male and the hunter-gatherer kind of thing going on, but also being soft and approachable without that being just this mush. And everybody has to find that themselves. Everyone has that journey, and it may take some people are on that early. They're like figuring it out really early, and some people never get it. We're all on the timeline somewhere.
Right.
But for me, it became apparent that, once I realized that relationships are the most important thing in life, I realized that to cultivate relationship, you have to be a good listener, and you have to be a little bit softer, but you have to be clear about who you are. And I'm getting better about who I am. And part of who I am is this loud, boisterous, energetic, physical kid that's still in there. So I can smash stuff in the gym and wail around and feel good about my body physically against all the other guys my age in the world, in competition or whatever. That drives me. And that's all very male, and I'm still a hunter I want to excel at whatever I do. And that's not necessarily a male dominant trait. There's plenty of women that feel that way too, but that's definitely in my toolbox, but I feel really balanced in this last 5 or 6 years of, and a lot of it has to do with quitting drinking 10 years ago, but just coming into touch with that strong physical smash them upside and that softer listener, what can I offer side of me? And it's fun to balance it because it feels really good, because I'm not losing myself in one or the other, and one isn't overpowering the other, but they're two very different forces. So
I think that's why having outlets is so important. Because I agree with you. I think that, the strongest version of yourself is the one that can express both sides. That you can listen to people and you can actually hear them, not just hear the noise of the words, but you can actually understand what they're saying, be present to be part of the conversation with them. And you can also express who you are unapologetically. And if part of who you are is smash shit around and go and have a good time in the gym and build things, great. Be that 100%. Don't waver it for someone else's feelings, but understand how they are, or understand who they need to be in that moment. Because you're right. Everyone arrives at every moment from everything's just like this. Is so strange, but I always think of it like this. There's this horizontal line that you're on in your life, from the dot where you're born to the part where you go off the line. And it's just kind of this big triangle with the head of the triangle on this line. It's just going forward. And on one side of the triangle is all the shit that's happened in your life, all the experiences and the good experiences and the bad experiences, and people making fun of you and you being a dick and you being really nice and you building a house and you saving someone or doing something good for your neighbor or having someone cut you off on the highway. It's just whatever experience that has ever happened to you is just piled into this side of the triangle. And then at the very pinpoint tip of it is the now. It's this moment right now when we're on the podcast talking to each other. And
Right.
everyone, when you meet them, you're meeting every pinnacle of that triangle and all the directions that the line flows for different people.
Right.
And you have no fucking idea what's on the
Right.
other side of that. You don't know. And it doesn't mean that you have to tiptoe walk on eggshells the rest of your life, but it's just worth noting that you don't know what's in the other person's triangle. You know, you
Right.
have
And
their
it's
life.
worth noting that we all need to work on judgment and to
For
let
sure.
go of judgment, because we don't know what's in that triangle for anybody.
Right.
You may see somebody that you aspire to be like, or that you, whatever aspect it is, whether their finances or their physical looks or their ability to do something. And yet it's a shit show right behind that aspect of them, so you don't want that. But you're going, I want that, but no. Or you judge them in a negative way, that because of something and you have to let go of that. We all have to, because we need more compassion, and to know that they've got that triangle, and it's a shit ton of good and a shit ton of bad and a shit ton of ugly in there. And we may be of assistance, to help that person in some way, or they may be able to give a little reverb back and help us. But you can't do it if you have preconceived notions about who they are or what they're going through. It doesn't work, because that's all BS. That's all manufactured. And it's like, there's no basis for it until you open up and you get them to open up and you share. And then, you can move forward and go.
Sometimes people never do that. Sometimes their whole life. And it's hard, because judgment's a natural thing. Like, I don't know, walk outside your house, you're going to see a bunch of shit and you're going to like some of it and you're not going to like the other stuff. Like, that's how it is. You walk into a restaurant, I don't really like the chairs here. It's just, we have those thoughts in our head. It's just part of being human. You're going to judge your environment, because judgment allows us to make decisions. You walk into the middle of the street, you don't see stop signs, like, maybe I should look both ways. You're judging the situation based on the environment. It's just, that's how we've evolved as a species for thousands, millions of years. So we make decisions based on what's around us. So judgment is normal. It's going to happen, but it's what you choose to do with those judgments. And again, I don't think it means you just have to be soft and crying all the time and super cautious of every single person's feelings, but you should be aware of the impact that you can have on someone if you choose to be a dick.
Right. Because the stop sign thing, that's like an inert object or a situation. It doesn't involve emotion. The stop sign has no emotion, or the lack thereof. Yes, you're assessing and judging the situation, but when it's a human, then that's where you have to let go of that preconceived judgment because of their background or their, whatever it might be, their ethnicity or their financial placement. That's where there's a person there with a beating heart, and that's what gets affected when you open your mouth, because you've got some preconceived notion about where they are and how they think and what, and all you just come across as an idiot. I know that there was a period that lasted longer than I would like to admit in your childhood, when I used to make fun of people. Like, I always put it in the context of humor. Like, oh, look at, so the big hat or something, or somebody's size, or, and I look back and I'm like, God, I had misaligned humor. I was, for whatever reason, and maybe I should look into it more as to why I was like that. And then you guys were like that. We used to be in the car and we're like, just kind of almost like not ridicule, but just like point out things and then make judgment on basic people or houses or businesses or whatever it was. And you came back from college, I think, one time, and you're like, what the fuck? Because we're in one of those veins. And after you left, it was with Jen, and so it wasn't college, it was after that. I was like, that's got to stop. That's really bad behavior, even though I justify it as being humorous, and it wasn't, oh, they wouldn't hear it, so it's okay kind of thing. Or I'm not affecting that person because I'm just in a car passing by or looking across the street. And it just made me feel shitty.
Yeah.
And so that took a while to kind of erase that. And I haven't really dug deep as to why that developed in the first place, like that behavior.
It's that stuff, I think, is part of it. It's an evolving, like the culture around vocabulary and just the way that we communicate with each other, I think is just changing a lot. And so there's sensitivities around that maybe we're more aware of now that we didn't used to be. And so obviously, I'm one generation further, but I remember specifically, there's this example, and I don't know if it was the same one that you're referencing, because this was a college experience, but I just remember, like, the word fag when I was younger in our community. I don't remember it was just commonly used, inappropriately, but commonly used. I heard it a bunch when I was growing up. I said it a bunch when I was growing up, never with the intention of inflicting harm or pain on somebody, but I just said it.
Mhm.
I just didn't think about it. And I was at Boulder, and I was on like the quad one time with some friends, and I just made a really bad offhand comment, and in the moment didn't think anything of it. And the person who we were with said, "Hey, don't say that. Please don't say the F word around me." And that was the first time I'd ever heard anyone say the F word, referring to that word.
Mhm.
And I was like, what? And in my initial reaction was, fuck you. Like, don't tell me how to talk. But then at the same time, I was kind of like, huh, clearly I'm not hearing what's being said here. Like,
Right.
they're
Right.
hearing something that I'm not, and I don't know why that is. And I don't know what things in life experience have brought them to a place where they feel like they need to tell me not to. But I asked them, I was like, sorry, did you say this? And they're like, yeah, just don't look, like, that word's not cool. Don't say it around me. And I was like, cool. Okay, I won't. And I remember from that moment on, I was like, this is just not, it's not something you're going to say in conversation. It's not something you're going to say off the cuff. I didn't know why, but I was curious as to why. And I knew that just saying it produced a really bad outcome. And it was an outcome that's super easy to avoid. I didn't
And
need
that
to say
is
that shit anymore. And I don't. And I didn't,
right.
So, but it
But
was,
when you
you don't
said it was a
know.
generational thing, I think I agree that there's constant evolution on a lot of these things, but you're right, like language and behavior that changes over time, and acceptance of things. I mean, look at some of the atrocities in historically that were sort of okay to do, that are like, no way. And there's language that we don't use for disabilities or different um, different things that and rightly so. But like you say, and it was okay. And the same thing is, I grew up with that, where you know I I want to say my parents, but I my dad was in the Navy for a while, and he was young, and I remember that songs and jokes and the things that came out of the Navy. And I was a little kid, but I remember some of them, and some of the songs I can sing to this day that I won't sing,
Right.
because they're not appropriate in what he was doing and living, and how he was living, and nothing wrong with what he was doing. It, but it's that's evolving. And I think and we see it in the news all the time, and it's creating some confusion to a certain degree, because there's always a line there, and the line you were talking about earlier, of that, that masculinity and that softness. It's the same as what's appropriate and what isn't. Some of it's like a slam dunk, like your friend says, hey, don't say that anymore. And you think about it a little bit, yeah, they're right. I shouldn't.
I was at that moment. I was ignorant. I was uneducated on why that was hurtful. That's honest. That's like what, I came to that moment in time, never thinking about that ever once. Said it in that situation, got corrected, and went, I can totally be on board with why that's not okay to say here. And I'm not going to do it anymore.
Right.
Because it's
It makes
like,
you aware that maybe there's other things you say too, in the same vein, in the same
right.
time frame, you know, of whom, if I said that unknowingly, then maybe there's other things or other behaviors.
And this is, but this is
That's
where it gets, to me, this is where it gets muddy, because there's, like you said, there's this line that you kind of always want to be, you do want to be on the right side of it because you want to be conscious of other people's feelings. And it's not like you greedily want to hold all the curse words close to you and you're like, I don't want to, have rules about what I can say. But like, there's shit that you just shouldn't say,
right.
no matter what. And you know what those sayings are, you know what those words are. You shouldn't fucking say them. And then maybe there's some that like are situational. They're going to have more offense to certain people in certain situations. And I think it all comes down to like mindfulness and education. You need to be educated about these things. And if you're not, you should be curious about it. And then you should be mindful of your situation, where you are, who you're with, what you're doing,
Right.
and be
All the above.
open to be respectful to people. And if you say something and someone's upset by it and they communicate that to you, be a fucking human.
Right.
Like,
you got to be humble.
yeah, be humble, be a human.
You gotta own your shit
Yeah.
when you, and that was something I didn't do for a long time. When I was growing up, I was just like, you don't like my shit, screw you.
Right.
And that's how I kind of steamrolled and got my stuff done. And then as I got older, I'm like, that's not such a good way to be, you know. If we all make mistakes, some of them are really egregious and some are much milder, but you got to own them all. And the quicker you own them, the better off you are at both sides. If someone else has been affected, and usually somebody is, whether it's a person in your relationship or a family member or a friend or a stranger, you need to, your gut, you got to get in touch with your gut, because your gut will tell you right away whether that was right or not. And then you have to act on it. And
That takes a lot of humility too.
it really does. And when you're coming from, like, for me, it was a long journey, and it continues to be, and it will always be. It'll be a journey until, dust in the wind. It's that embracing that humility, because you get quicker at the response. That gets shorter and shorter and shorter, and then pretty soon you're not responding because those things aren't being done or said. And so it just becomes, you're better in that way. But that's a lifetime's work, because we're constantly evolving, and humans are evolving, and the world situation is evolving, and people's personalities are all over the place. But it's really fun and satisfying work. Like, I look at my life now after almost 6 decades, and I really like the wisdom I have of my life experience.
Mhm.
And it's just fun to look at and be able to apply that to different situations consciously. But it takes a lifetime to gather those experiences. You can be enlightened as a 22-year-old, and really be like there, but you don't have 3 more decades of life experience to add to that enlightenment. That's a really valuable thing. And so, people always say, respect your elders, and there's a lot to be said for that. There's a lot of wisdom there. There's a lot to be learned. And yes, there's big generational, like, that's a giant generational gap. So ways of thinking or doing, sometimes there's no evolution there in that person. And so they're still the same. But it's a really interesting marker. Like, wow, that's like old school, or something like that, of just the ways it used to be done. Grandma doing her thing, the same thing she's done for 70 years or something, is pretty wild. But there's so much going on and so much we can be more present with, and being able to throw in that life experience is fun because I take a step back now where I used to be really reactionary immediately. Now I've learned the power of just take a deep breath or sleep on it or whatever it is, so it's much less volatile. Because when I was younger and reactionary, then you got to own your shit more because you misread situations, or your triangle of shit makes you behave in a certain way that's way off base.
Yeah.
And now you got to own it. You got to apologize to that person that you blew up at or whatever,
It takes a big
and
person to
we're,
do that.
so I have way fewer instances. What's that?
It takes a big person to, I mean, I think about your sobriety all the time, and we're sitting here having this conversation because you don't drink anymore. There were a lot of
Right.
times where, I remember many conversations where I'm teary-eyed and you're stone-faced, and I'm asking you to stop, and you're saying, get a spot in line. But basically, I mean,
Yeah.
to see, for me, it's been such a powerful experience in my life to be in the thick and the shittiness of it with you, combating you as your eldest son when my brother and sister were too young to really be aware at the beginning of it. And just the blow ups and when you and I would get into it, and all the different events that happened that were so in my face and vivid, that were not enough. They weren't enough to get you to change. But then in hindsight, at the end, you did. And that's all that matters. I mean,
And
you can bring a horse to water.
and
You can't make it
one of the
drink,
biggest,
but go ahead.
one of the biggest reasons I did was because of you, and because of your brother and sister, and because of a relationship that was close. So those repeated blows that you took, that you stood up and you took another blow, and you stood up and you took another blow, and that was like, those affected me every time, whether I could admit it or see it right then.
Right.
But the single most important part of my decision was that I was going to lose my relationship with Jen, and I was going to lose my relationship with you guys, that you guys were all going to walk, that
Right.
you've had it. And so you took some heavy blows, but they were all worth it because
For sure.
ultimately it impacted me. And I remember you and I had a conversation one time, and I had quit. I don't remember how long I had quit. And of course, it was just cold turkey. And it takes a while to build trust again. Like I said, I'm done. And you guys are like, yeah, well, you went from drinking 14 beers a day to none. So when is it going to blow up again? I don't want to open my heart to you fully
Well, and it
because
was on top of that, but it was also repeated failed sobriety attempts, which is the hardest trust to build, is coming back from, you take the phone call, hey, I got a sponsor, I'm getting clean this time, I'm good, I'm not going to drink, I'm working with somebody, and you really want to believe it because on the other side of it how powerful it can be, and then it comes crashing down. And then so it's all the shit from before plus the failed attempt, and then you're up against that to rebuild trust on top of that.
Yeah, and that was my biggest journey, difficulty in that journey, was I just had to be patient. And I don't have a lot of patience for a lot of things, but I had enough patience for that because I knew that if I didn't, it wasn't going to work, but all I had to do was think about the relationship. And back to this thing that I was going to say is, early on, and I don't remember exactly how long it was after I'd quit drinking, you and I talked, and I believe it was in person, and you said, let's just, and it had been some time because we were establishing trust. It had been maybe 6 months or something. You're like, the past is the past. Let's let that all go, and let's take our relationship from here forward, and let's build it from here. And I said, yes, let's build it from here. And we gave each other a big hug. And from that moment on, you and I were able to have conversations that weren't all caught, we didn't dwell on all this garbage and these clouded issues and stuff. We built from there forward until we were strong enough that then we were able to duck back and talk about some of the ugly things that you went through and how to process that. And I think that was a really mature decision that you made, instead of saying, look, you asshole, I got 8 years of stuff that I want to really beat the crap out of you about, but I'm willing to let that all go for now. And let's go forward and build something strong, a really solid foundation that we have to this day. I love what we share and talk about, life experiences and things and emotional issues and questions we have. You and I have talked so much about so many really valuable things that's all in place because of that one day decision. And so if the veil ever gets thin and I'm like, oh, it's Friday afternoon and it's sunny and I've worked hard all week and I could just use a pale ale right now, which would turn into 10. And I know that all I have to do is think about what you and I would lose, or what I would lose with Jen, or I would lose with Willow or Isaiah. Done. That thought just came in and went out, because it's just that's way too valuable to me at this point. And
how do you do that? Because I feel like that you say that like it's like, oh, I just I want to drink, and I'm like, no, but I mean, it's been 10 years. How do you win? You win 365 battles a year every time you win.
I do. And I pass it off as easy a lot. I go, yeah, no big deal. It's hard. It's every freaking day. It's just like going to the gym. There's plenty of days when you don't want to go. And those are the days when you should go and get your work done, because those are the days when, there's the crack in the armor, and then now you've gone down a path of like excuses as to why you're not going to the gym. And it's easier because, well, I did this because of that. And there's no room for error in alcoholism. Like, for me, with my type of personality, it's like I find this out in the gym all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm going to take it easy in this workout. 3, 2, 1, go, freaking pedal to the metal. See you later. It's like, I don't have second gear. I just don't. I have first and I have fourth. Like, boom, see you later. And that's how it would be with my drinking. And I know that there's no, so I can't waver. I can't. I've told myself no. And so I'm sticking to it. And I'm lucky. I'm blessed that I'm able to hold to that, because I'm surrounded by people that don't. I have a few friends that have, and they can, and we stay in touch because we're a rare breed. It's a tough struggle. It's a tough thing.
Does it feel like prison or freedom?
It feels like freedom, no question. Like, I love being alcohol free. There's no hangovers. I'm the built-in designated driver. I can bring people home safe. I'm always the safety net. I'm good judgment. I just know there's clarity there. I am completely in control of who I am. I don't have, a couple of drinks or more in me built on top of a couple more every day for the last X that have completely altered me chemically. Right. So that I'm making poor decisions and I'm not being me, and I'm reactionary in different ways. All of that's gone. So I'm me now. And what's really cool is, over time, as I peeled back the layers of that sort of short temper and that aggressive behavior and that stoic thing, all put there by the alcoholism, and I peel a lot of that back, is I'm who I was when I was younger, really young. Like, I'm that carefree, full speed Maynard kid that, a lot of parents would have put on Ritalin. Instead, my mom just said, go out and play, go out and run it off. and I'm still running it off, and I'm off
Right.
out playing and I'm doing fun shit. And I have my whole life now, but now I really feel it because there were a few decades in there where it slowly got more and more tarnished as my alcoholism sort of, it's progressive. And so as it got stronger, it was taking away some of those things. And it took me a number of years to get back in touch with that just spontaneous, aggressive energy, fun. Like I really like who I am now. And yet I've got so much work to do, but I'm
What did
happy. So it's not a prison, it's freedom.
what
Sure.
did alcoholism feel like to you?
When you're an alcoholic and you're in it
Yeah, or
versus
reflection. Yeah, both.
it, I think I used it because I wasn't really looking at, I was unhappy to a certain degree. Like I didn't feel fulfilled 100%. I didn't feel fully whole. And I think that your mom and I raised kids really, really well. I mean, I love you and Willow and Isaiah and how you've turned out and um, as adults, and I think that we did that really well, but we didn't pay attention to our relationship that much as we should have. As you grow over 20 years, we kind of lost touch and maybe lost touch with somebody that we really didn't fully deeply discover in the first place. I mean, we didn't date that long. It was a couple of years, I think, and I could be wrong on that, but I think it was a couple of years before we got pregnant. And that's not enough time to really fully plumb the depths of somebody's soul, and then stay in touch as you grow. So we focus so much on the kid thing that we were good at that we didn't focus on the relationship, the partner thing. So in hindsight, we could have done better and in that way. But so alcoholism slowly crept in to kind of mask that unhappiness. As much as on the outside, it might have looked like everything was freaking awesome. We were doing these crazy ass adventures and doing all this different stuff and raising a beautiful family. From the outside looking, everything was looking great. But again, there's that judgment thing. If you looked at that family with these beautiful kids and everyone's like, no, behind the scenes, it's maybe not so good. And it wasn't that we battled it out and it was ugly and dishes were getting broken and stuff. It was just that we didn't understand. We never matured enough to understand how to deal with our relationship and grow together and allow each other to grow individually, so that when you were old enough finally to give us some space, we're like, whoa, who are you? Looking at my partner. And so then we were just starting to go, wow, I don't know that we're really compatible. And then we were pregnant again with twins. Right. And so it was another 7 years of raising kids really well before we hit that spot again. And then we were like, we can't do this. But during that time, my alcoholism sort of slowly progressed because I just didn't feel like I was operating at 100%. It was like there was just some sadness in there that's how I dealt with it.
Right. So are you in like a perpetual state of toxicity and being hungover? Is that like always? Are you always somewhere on that spectrum of like drunk? Or I mean,
it wasn't like that. Like I didn't roll out of bed with a empty fifth of vodka. Right. I drank a lot of beer, but there were plenty of times of clarity and sobriety, and like the majority of the time. But anytime you can build up enough resistance to alcohol to be able to drink 12 like pale ales that are like 7% in a sitting, and then get up 5 hours later and put in a productive, just like, maybe not 100% productive day because you're recovering from that onslaught. But there's an issue there, there's carryover. So I wasn't like in a slurring my words state all day by any means, but on a cellular level, I was fucked. You know, you throw that much alcohol in your system on a regular basis, and subtly it's going to hit you in a lot of different ways.
I feel like you
And
hit on an important part there. That's like the progressive nature of it, because, you know, if I'm thinking back to before brother and sister were born, and then those 7 years, I don't really remember. Like when I think of your alcoholism, I really only think of it from like 17 to like 16 and a half to 18, as if as if that's the only time that it existed, which is really just when I was confronted with it.
right,
But in hindsight, that was really more like the tail end of it. It was like it had built very manageably and unknowingly, at least to someone looking on. And then it really expressed itself towards the end of it there. And I
right,
think, I mean, I know my personality is very much like you. You know, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And when you feel like you lose your personal liberties, it can be really frustrating. And when people are telling you what to do, you need to stop drinking. You're this when you're that way, whatever. You're like, oh, no, I'm not. You know, like you kind of, it makes it worse because then you do it in spite of everyone, to spite them, and because it's a problem. And so it really compounded at the end there and became more, I'd say, like the outbursts, we'll call it, like the worst moments became more frequent, closer
mm-hmm.
together, and louder.
Yep.
And that's when it, like, I mean, that's when it just was bad enough that it warranted something different. And I think that's maybe when you started to, maybe there was something in you that was ready to depart from it, but it wasn't your terms yet.
Yeah,
You had to get to that place.
you're absolutely right. I mean, the decision had to come from me. You know, granted, the line was drawn in the sand pretty clearly, but it had been kind of scratched there lightly, and it was slowly getting darker and darker, that line, but
Right.
it the decision had to come from me. And the thing about that progressive nature of the alcoholism is that most alcoholics will tell you that they're functional alcoholics. Like I could drink beer and work hard until 1 o'clock in the morning, go to sleep, get up at 6 and smash the day, and then do it all over again, day after day after day after day. But the problem is that it's slowly, the consumption level goes up, and that same pattern of functionality has to stay, and you can't fit it all in. So you start to fray at the edges and slip up and have incidents that are more public,
Right.
um, and 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 so I was really lucky that your voices on the other side were strong enough, and combined with my inner decision was before I lost it all, So
Right.
I'm really fortunate because I've talked to people that they got it all going on right now and they're awesome, but they lost everything, and it took
Yeah.
years and years and years to reestablish relationships. Some, they just don't get it back because there's too much damage on an emotional level with people that are close to them, because there's too much damage. But I was lucky in that you guys, you understood me, you loved me in a way that, that you still do. And the decision was made soon enough,
Right.
that we managed to salvage it. And I'm
Well,
really
and
proud of that.
I mean, you made, and credit where credit's due. I mean, one, you quit cold turkey, which is damn near impossible, but very Hudson of you to do that. um,
Yeah, how we do
that's
things.
tough for people, to really to say no. And then that's the, you said I'm done one time 10 years ago, and you were right. And that's crazy. But then in addition to that, you cut people out of your life. You cut good
Right.
friends out of your life. And that's,
Well,
as
that's really critical Yeah.
To
You have to.
anyone, you know, listening, that is, if you know anyone who struggles with addiction, or you know someone who's struggles with alcoholism, uh, on my side of it, there is some selfish aspects to it, right? Like you get to a point where you want the person to stop. You really want them to stop for you. And that's something you don't realize when it's happening. I didn't realize how bad I wanted you to stop for me,
Mm-hmm.
not wanting you to stop for your well-being so that you can get your ducks back in a row. And I didn't know that when it was happening. It was all about me. I wanted you to stop because I wanted my relationship with my dad. And when that's happening, neither you nor the person who's struggling with it gets that. And there's this unfortunate side that, like, when you quit, you have to quit for the rest of your life. You have to cut the people out of your life that you value their relationship and their friends. And I have to do none of that. I don't have to wear any of those hats. I just get my dad back. And when you understand that dynamic, for me, I think it built a lot of empathy and compassion towards you, and how difficult what you chose to do actually is, not just how difficult it seems, but you're changing decades of choices on the drop of a dime, which is fucking insane. And you're cutting people out of your life that you recognize as toxic and in the way of living the life you want to live. And that's really hard. It's really hard. And that's real shit. That's very fucking difficult. And it's beyond admirable. But I never thought that I would see that insight until much later. How selfish it can be, even though you think what you're doing is trying to help the other person, when really, and maybe that's why it doesn't happen yet. You know, that's why it takes time, is because it isn't an even request. It's a selfish request.
Right. But it's not a request that falls on deaf ears, you know, as much as you might think. It's you know, again, for people listening, that it may get brushed off, like that request, like of yours, like where you said you kept getting knocked down, you know, like it wasn't, you weren't reaching me or whatever. It's cumulative on a cellular level, you know, that those go in and they accumulate, and hopefully they accumulate quick enough that you don't lose it all prior to the decision being made. You know, some people never make that decision. They're not able to. And, you know, again, I feel blessed. I don't go to meetings, you know, I don't feel the need, I don't need that support. So it's phenomenal network out there. And for some people, 2-3 meetings a day is what required. And luckily there's a support system for that in Alcoholics Anonymous. And there's people all over the world meeting every day in small, big, and, you know, giant groups. And that's a really critical support system. But I'm blessed that I have that freedom to be able to not struggle on that level. But it's fucking hard some days. Like, I don't realize it until later, you know, I know that to balance that out, that's why I go to the gym, you know, smash CrossFit 5-6 days a week, because I have to, because otherwise, like, I'm looking for something to take up that space. And again, there's no margin for error with the alcoholic. So I have to be wailing on this over here.
Right.
And that community that I have, people that I work out with, is a phenomenal support group. And it's not that they're there for support of my ability to overcome my drinking, but they're there because they're a positive group and they're doing a positive thing for themselves for something that's really important to me, which is taking care of your physical body, which also takes care of your, you know, your emotional state. So
when you started CrossFit, were you sober yet?
no.
So how did
I did my 2 Ironmans, like, drinking, but again, it wasn't like, there again, I was able to train
Right.
and
But I
but
would I would categorize at that point, like when you were doing the Ironmans, I feel like the drinking was like, I don't know, I would say
it was
normal. I would
regular,
almost call it
but
normal.
absolutely because
Sorry, say that again.
absolutely classified as an alcoholic back then because an alcoholic is if you I think the criteria is like more than 2 drinks at a sitting more than twice a week.
Okay.
So, um, so technically, yeah, but it when I started CrossFit, that was on the vineyard, and my life had kind of blown up. The divorce with your mom, the relocation, and Willow and Isaiah were in the mix of like they came out to go to high school there, and Jess was out west, your mom, and it was a really difficult time emotionally, and I needed that like structured physical outlet. Um, so that started then, but then that continued, that's continued since. So it's yeah, because it was right around the same time. But I was drinking because it's been 10 years and I've been doing CrossFit for like 10
Right.
years.
How
So,
instrumental do you think CrossFit has been in your sobriety?
um, again, I think it's pretty critical for me to have a physical outlet
Yeah.
of something that I'm competitive and I love structured competitive athletics. I'm not one, it seems like all the and it's in it, and I'm not like a team sport kind of guy. I just never have been. I didn't play ball because I was on a boat, and
Yep.
I did triathlons, which is you against the clock, and I did, mountain bike racing, which is you against the clock, and the different various athletic pursuits has always been, me against myself. And CrossFit is very much that, even though sometimes you could do team things, and that's fun, but it's all about you going to the gym, and it's, what kind of output can you produce, and I just love all the challenges of it. It's such a rounded athleticism that's required, of some of which I had zero ability at, when I started. So it's just, and it's critical. I realized that when I look back at my training history, I've been so freaking consistent because it's an absolute requirement for balance in life,
It's crazy how
and even
like
Jen says that, that's one of the first bills she pays every month is my
it's a
CrossFit bill.
CrossFit ball.
She's like, you haven't worked out in like 2 days. Why don't you get to the gym?
It's
Oh,
your
nice.
security.
Yeah.
I mean, I told you the other day, I was going to get that like monoclonal antibody treatment thing, and I had a panic attack in the parking lot. And like I haven't had a panic attack in since that day at Enterprise when I had the panic attack and I punched a hole through the wall. And I've reflected a lot on, I mean, it was only, like a week ago, but I've thought a lot about what contributed to that, because it was, when it happened, it was a very emotional panic attack, which is, I don't know, to anyone who's had a panic attack before, or if you haven't, I've had two, and this was the second one. And the second one, I started to know what was happening, which is weird. It feels like a welling up, like you feel like you're charging up almost. And I was on the freeway. I had to pull over into a parking lot randomly. And you become overwhelmed with whatever. In this case, I was just overwhelmed. I was overwhelmed and I was stressed out. And it was a compound of not knowing if I wanted to get this treatment, being unable to find good information on it, on either end of it, feeling lost, confused, unsure what to trust, where to go. And I realized when it was over, crying and like beside myself and very emotional, and you feel alone and lost and just kind of like, it just sucks. And I was like, what fucking contributed to that? Like, it couldn't have just been confusion. And from having COVID, I had to take time off jujitsu. I had to take time off from training. And I'm like, if there's waves, I'm surfing. If there's not, I'm training. If there's not, I'm no matter what, I'm at jujitsu 3 to 4 days a week plus striking class. So it's like my output is 10x all the time. And it's a really important part I've found of my mental health. And meditation is a big part of that, but physical output, physically expelling energy is really, really valuable to me, and specifically combat sports, because of anything that you want to let out, like you have the freedom to do that. There's rules, don't gouge someone's eyes out, but like you can go for it. And you mentioned something much earlier about like kind of like losing control and lashing out. And like, if you do that, you're just going to get your shit kicked in. So you could even do that if you want to. You could totally lose your shit, and it's going to come back tenfold on you every single time. And I've realized that there's such a value in that for me, of my clarity and sanity is in my structured, consistent, and consistent's the key word there, structured and consistent physical regimen. Mm-hmm. That is where my sanity and well-being lies. And in an idle week, it all fucking came up and blew up. And I realized that some of those factors were external, they were from the situation, but a lot of them stemmed from being inactive. And mm-hmm. It's so important to have something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I look back and I've had that my whole entire life. My whole entire life, I've been active, physically active, even if it was work when I was a carpenter, you put in 8-hour days, like come off the couch sometime and frame a house for 2 weeks and see how your body feels, right? You're smashed. Like it's very physical. And I spent years doing that. And so the expenditure of energy, whether part of the reason I stayed in it is because, and something I've always told you kids my whole life is, your whole life is, make sure you enjoy what you do, pursue things that you enjoy. And I've always enjoyed building. And part of that enjoyment, yes, I like to take, a roll of single dimensional plans and create this magnificent 3-dimensional object out of it. But I love the physicalness of it. Like I enjoyed my work when I did majority of it was physical. I really enjoyed that because it was physical and because it was just satisfying that part, keeping that part of me in balance. Right. And I don't think that, I don't know because I don't have a crystal ball and I can't look back. But if I had an office job, say, where I sat in a chair, even if I was really good at what I did, I don't know that I would have enjoyed it because I would have been out of balance. Right. Because you can't because I require the 8-hour day of physicalness and then work out, Right. So it wouldn't have been enough to then just go to the gym for lunch hour or something. That would not have kept me in balance. And that's something I've always known.
You definitely, you break the mold. I mean, when you go into a CrossFit or even on a job site, I mean, you're 57, you move like a 30-year-old. There's not many people that can say that, I mean, you're just not buying into the I'm getting old thing. And I love it. But I wonder, is there ever, how do you think about age? I mean, being on the +7 side of 50. Does it freak you out?
The only thing that I want, the only thing that freaks me out is I want to make sure that I'm financially secure when I don't want to work anymore, Right. So I got that going on and that's fine. We're working on that and that's doing its own thing. But age, you hear it, oh, age is just a number. I love being in the physical shape I'm in for my age. It's like the top half
For
of a
your age,
percent.
for a lot of ages.
It's and the only thing I can really compare it to is CrossFit athletes, that are my age specifically, and they do the same things. And so we can gauge ourselves every year against each other.
Right.
And there's a world full of really fit guys out there, and I'm right up there in the cream of the very top. And it's not because I have any exceptional physical ability. It's because I enjoy working out and I'm consistent. And it's been over time. And I didn't smash myself in a collegiate sport that was really physical, like
Right.
bust my knees up or have to have a back surgery, or, so many athletes that are my age now, they've come out of retirement in their 40s because they've got the dad bod and they finally have time for themselves. And then they realize that the injuries that they sustained in college are real inhibitors at this point, that unless they focus for 5 years on freeing all that stuff up, but maybe there's too much damage or whatever. Like, I didn't have that misfortune. My knees are good. My hips are good. Knock on wood. Shoulders are good. I get little tweaks and I have little injuries, but over 10 years of CrossFit, I've had one mild weightlifting knee injury, and a recurring thing with my foot that was for a construction incident 40 years ago,
Right.
35 years ago. So I love it. I love it. It just I feel young. My brain feels young. Like, I feel like I'm 25. Not physically I feel 25. I just feel like you just don't get, in some ways you don't get older. On some things like wisdom and life experience, you're older and you can tap into that. But like my mind, I don't feel 57. I don't feel 50.
Right.
Some days I'm a little creakier going down the stairs and I joke. I'm like, oh God, I feel like I'm 40, but but it's I'm really psyched to push my body in the way that I do. And I've learned to do it safely so I can work out 5 or 6 days a week hard, doing things, inverting push-ups and, all kinds of crazy things that I never would have dreamed of being able to do consistently over time. But just paying attention to my body and having good coaches, that know me and understand my body and say, we discuss things, and I don't have an ego that says, oh, I got to throw down with the guys that are 35. Most of the time I beat them anyway. But I listen. And if there's a scaling option, or I don't feel like it that day because my shoulders are tight and I can't seem to get them loosened up, then I'm not going to go and wail on, that particular movement. I'm going to take it easy and back it off, and it's fine. And I'm good with that. Some guys aren't good with that.
I feel like a lot of it's like there's a mental component to it also. Donald Cerrone, legendary MMA fighter, he always says, he's like, Father Time comes a knocking, and I just never answer the fucking door. Like, it's a mentality. It's people.
Yeah.
My whole life, no matter what age I am, there's always people that are going, oh well, wait till you get to my age. I heard that so many freaking times. They're like, oh, you're lucky you got your knees. Just wait till you're 35. Or, oh, your back feels. Just wait till you're 41. And I'm like, the fuck is that? Like, what kind of attitude is that? You're just admitting defeat to nobody but yourself.
It gives them an excuse to not do what they're doing,
right, to not show up, to not be consistent, to not, what, if my back hurts, then I'm going to lie on my back flat and I'm going to do presses. Like, you can always do something. If you're going to let this one thing, whatever it is, completely sideline you from all the things that you love to do, or any activity that you want to take on, that's just bullshit. And of course you're going to get it. You're already old just by saying that you're old. Like, your ability to stay young and active, it's a mindset.
Yeah. And you have to, and again, you have to be consistent. It's hard work. Like, it's not a 6-minute ab machine that you fold up and put under the bed and now you got this 6-pack of abs. It's not not even friggin' close. Like if you don't have your sleep dialed and your diet dialed and your time in the gym over and 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 over again, you're not gonna build your body.
Well,
And it's
and
just
you said it's a really important aspect of that is the listening to your body part too, because you can go in and smash it 7 days in a row and then you won't train for a month, or you can be
right.
smart. And it's consistency over time is the thing that keeps you. One, it builds your confidence because you keep doing the things. So you're feeling better about the fact that you can do it. So
Mhm.
you will show up more and then you'll make less excuses. And then when things do present themselves, you find a solution instead of using it as an excuse or a crutch. And so it keeps
Yeah.
you going in the right direction.
Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard.
There's
You know,
so many,
it's
I mean, there's so many days when I don't want to do it. So many
mhm.
days. There's a lot, like a lot of days where I don't want to go train at night. I don't want to go do grappling, or I don't want to do a training session. Just get used to that.
And most of those times, the majority of those times when you come out of it on the other end, you're so glad you went
The
and you
best, the
feel
best.
100% better.
Yes.
Like I found that, and that's what gets me in there. And the consistency, the car turns that way from the house. It automatically does. You know, I leave it if I just like, oh, I guess I'm going to the gym because I turned left. And the bag of stuff's in the car, and then you're like, okay, you know, and then pretty soon you're warming up, and then you might PR. Like I've had the best year this year. Like
Wait, how much was that in your back squat?
that, I think that was 275 for
That's okay.
3.
That's what I thought. My buddy, he messaged me and he's like, "Holy shit!" He's like, "How much is that?" And so we were pausing the video and
Yeah,
trying to. I'm like, I don't know, because those might be
place.
10-pound bumpers or 15-pound bumpers. That's a 35 for sure.
Well,
Shit.
psychologically, it's fun when you put the bumper plates on because they're
No, for
freaking
sure.
giant,
I know.
you know.
There,
But
this guy.
but
Hold on, real quick. This when I was training at Venice Barbell Club, there was this joke. This guy Max, I was warming up and I just kept putting tens on for that reason. It was like an ego thing. I was like, oh, this is great. It's a lot of weight. And he's like, he started calling me all greens because I had all the green weights on there. I was like, ah, shit, I can't do that anymore. That's
yeah,
like a faux pas.
the thing's fully loaded and the
Yeah.
bar's not
And no
bending
one
yet.
can train because all the bumper plates are gone. But
Well, for
that's
me,
big weight.
and
275 is big shit.
it's been a year. I've coming back 2 years now since I just wrecked my knee to a certain degree, you know, and I didn't get it fixed. I just worked on it.
Same.
And
Surprise.
so so it still hurts a little bit here and there, but it took 2 years slowly building up on it, you know, and now I'm PRing everything this year. This fall has been just every time I mean, I just did toes to bar, max toes to bars, and I obliterated my record. So it's just showing up all over the place. And I'm excited because in February is the open for CrossFit, and that's the big deal for me to see where I sit against all the old farts like me in the world. And I feel like I'm finally like injury free and poised and feeling really good, and I'm stronger than I ever have been, and I still have, you know, the motor, and so it'll be really fun. This year will be really fun.
So how many
But
years do you have
you know,
left in the age group?
it's a what's that?
How many years left do you have in your
What's
age group?
that?
How many years
It's
are left
always
in?
5 years, so it's 55, 59,
Yeah.
and I'm 57. So if I can advance every year, do better in the rankings every year, to me that's a giant victory, because at this age each year, technically, like the guys coming in at 55 smash it, you know, versus the 59, unless you're an exceptional 59-year-old. I mean, the difference versus 25 to 29, the guys aren't that much different year to year, but you get to 55, 59, it's a big difference. There's a lot of attrition, and there's a lot of like the volume that you have to maintain to be at the very top is it's a lot of volume for a lot of guys' bodies, you know, and so it's tough.
What do you
But
think's like the separator on CrossFit athletes? Like, what makes the best CrossFitter, in your opinion?
I think anybody coming out of a gymnastics, like on the collegiate level,
Hmm.
is they're the best CrossFit athletes. With it, there's always exceptions, but that's just that shoulder work, that core work, that ability to just the body weight ability and the balance. They're just amazing. Then you just need to build your engine.
Right.
And a lot of those guys from their sessions that they've done and the type of volume, they've got it. They just need, and you can build your engine. It's much harder for me to like develop a, say, consistent ring muscle ups at 57
Right.
versus tapping into that range of motion and that muscle memory from doing it collegiately, doing thousands of them. But
Right.
they can build much faster to be able to keep that endurance up.
Yeah.
And so it's, but the beauty of CrossFit is there's so many things to do that, like, I'm great at wall balls. I'm really good in the rower. I can smash the bike. I'm pretty strong for my age. I can, for my body weight, and yet I've got holes in my game. Some of the gymnastic stuff, I can't handstand walk very well, but sometimes I got to just say, hey, how many 57-year-olds can handstand walk? And not very many, so it's okay.
Well, and it's fun to
So, but I
be,
always have something to work on, and it's fun. So
yeah, it's good to have
it's
to be in the process of something, to have, you're working towards a goal. You want to get better, you want to get faster, you want to put up more weight, do things quicker, but it's the in-between time that's really the best. It's the camaraderie, it's the working on a skill, it's going in there, the consistency, having a place to go and do this. Like, I always kind of joke to myself, like, I haven't gotten like a stripe on my belt all year at training. And I went up to Professor the other day and I was joking because some of my fellow teammates have gotten stripes that had been promoted after me. And so I was like, hey, Nick, what the fuck? Like, you're not gonna give me a stripe all year. And I could really give two shits, because you could keep me a blue belt the rest of my life and I'm always gonna train. I love jiu-jitsu. It's technical and it's a good expression of physical strength. It's all these things that I like. And so I don't really care. But it's not about, like, the stripes don't matter really. It's a tool to keep people invested mentally. It's like, oh, you're climbing this hypothetical ladder of skill, but
right.
it doesn't matter. It could be take everyone's belt off. That's not the thing that I'm there for. I'm there for the learning process of getting better. I'm there for the days where I get stuck, where shit's really frustrating, where I fail, where I get beat by people that I feel like I should beat, where I learn lessons about myself. And it's that process is the number one most important, most valuable thing that I take away from it. And then the stripes and everything, it's just like, it's like flair. It's just kind of funny, but it doesn't really matter. You're there for CrossFit. You're there for the skill set. Maybe you only did 10 muscle ups today, and in a year you do 12. And that additional 2 is cool because it shows you that you got better as an athlete. That's the part that matters.
Right. To me, for sure, being competitive, I need to see improvement. Like, I have to be, like, I'm all in, and I'm all in because I enjoy the sport, but I'm also all in because I want to see improvement. And I don't need a friggin' trophy. And like you say, I don't need the belt, but I don't need the stripes, but I want to see the improvement. And it's satisfying when you do get a stripe, or you do get a different color belt, or you do. Like, I'm satisfied when I wail on a workout. I'm like, I know I gave it the absolute best I could. And now I get to see how I rank against all those guys. And I'm like, wow, look at that. I like that. It feels good. And I'm cool with seeing how I rank. And some people, they don't care about the competitiveness at all, about whatever sport they're in. It definitely drives me. Like,
For sure.
I want to, like, what do you mean you got 30 of those, And it doesn't make me deviate into an unsafe place, but it gives me motivation, because I'm like, there's going to be a day when I'm going to do 31 of those things, because that's what I'm going to do. And that's just a way of keeping that drive alive at the level that I need. You got to keep putting wood on the fire,
Yeah.
And that's one of the ways, one of the baskets that have sticks in it, that feeds that competitive side. And I don't mind that, it's always been something like I'm a statistic guy. Like I'll look at my rankings and all the leaderboards and all that. And I really love that stuff, all the data.
Yeah.
And so that's something that drives me. And for some people, they could care less. They just want to go in and work out and do what they're doing and then leave. And that's great, you know? And we have
Remember,
mixes
we used to do that
of all those people.
With my mogul skiing. Like we would always kind of sit down at the bottom and look at the readouts and statistics. And it's like, hey, you know, if you skied at the 1/5 of a second faster and did the same errors, you'd beat Jimmy. And if you, you know, you did this, it's kind of like, I enjoy that aspect, a lot of it too. I think I love competition. I think competition it's the most humbling teacher, because you can think all you want about who you think you are and what you think you would do and how capable you think you are and how you would handle this or that. And when it's you and the bar, or you and your opponent, or you and the clock, whatever it is, shit don't lie. You know, then the truth comes out, and all those games that you play with yourself in your head and the perceptions and who you like, all those thoughts, they don't mean anything. And it comes down to work, consistency, grit, which is a hard thing to develop. Can you outwork your previous self? Can you outwork your opponent when you both don't want to be there anymore? When you don't want to run anymore? When you got a blister on your fucking foot 2 miles into the marathon of Ironman? What do? Do you keep, like, I think those moments of competition are where you learn the most about who you are.
Yeah, and it's interesting you talk about that, because the mental game, like in competition, the mental game, and I can only speak for like the type of sports that I've been in, but I think it probably carries over into all sport, that your mental game, where's your mental game? And you that's got to come to play. And that your body is always capable of more than your mind tells you that it is. And so I always tell myself that before I start a workout. Just remember that your mind is going to tell you to quit, and your body is not. Your body can take it. And so it's an ugly place that a lot of people run away from, is when you get to that line of your body's telling you to stop. Most people will stop. Oh, I'm working out and it got really hard, so I don't want to push myself. That's the place where I love to push past. And that's the place where that's really hard mental shit that you go through when your body like just wants to, there's like, you just feel like there's no way you can do one more repetition or hang on for that one little bit more, but you can. And each time that you do, you put this imprint that you can do more. Now you remember that feeling, and your body remembers, and and the mind and body connection is going to move you further along in that. And that's all that competitive drive. Some people never go through all of that, and I go through that every freaking workout, and it's it's magnified in competition, because I know that now you got something on the line. It's not just a workout. You've just the time or the whatever the score. This is to really see what you're made of. And the other person, I know that the other guy is in the same battle, and it's exactly what you were just talking about.
Yeah.
And what's he gonna say? What's his mind? Where is his mind gonna crack? And his mind is gonna crack.
It's tough too, because to the same point, like you said, you're kind of teaching yourself one way or the other. When you break through that and you get into that uncomfortable place and you go past that line and you walk out on the other side, like, okay, I got this. And then the next time it presents itself, you already know you did. It can happen the other way though, too. If you give up, you can become a giver upper. Like you can get to that place and go, I'm going to back off today. Or like this happens. I have like a mantra I read myself every time I go train at night. And a lot of it's about this, because you can be in a position or an altercation or a scramble, and you feel like only you are working as hard as you can and that the other guy's just beating you. But the reality is you're both working really hard and one of you is going to win. The scramble is going to be won by somebody. And it's either going to be won technically, which sometimes they can't do much about that, or it's going to be won because you're willing to commit to overcoming that really shitty, uncomfortable part. And when you do that, that's when, you know, fighters talk about like, I'm going to break his spirit. I'm going to break their will. Is you see it in fights, guys, their eyes change and they don't want to be there anymore. And they've been broken. And you can break yourself or you can build yourself. And it happens every single time you train, whether it's one extra rep, whether it's, and I mean, this can even be extended to discipline or rest, which is also a discipline, you know, being finite about when you rest and when you recover. But it is tough to build that engine in your head.
Yeah, that comes with combative, if you will, experience, being in that position, because that it's just like, you know, building your lactate threshold. You have to kind of pop up in there and come out, and pop up in there and come out, and then it teaches your body and it puts you in that position. So now that slowly gets bumped higher and higher, and that's fitness. You know, you're getting more fit as you do that, but you're not going to get more fit if you just bump at that line, you know, and you don't go up. There's value to that too, you know, that type of exercise. But when you go boop and you pop into that and push your threshold, aim is with, if every time your mind said, I'm gonna do one more rep, and you just say, no, I'm not gonna do it, then pretty soon you're always stopping at that line, because your body is like, oh sweet, I'm at that place. Yeah. And so but you know, I don't win all the battles, because there's times when I'm like, holy shit, or there's factors that I learn about, like heat, you know, or humidity, totally affect.
But it's, did you that day, did you put forth the best effort that you had? Can you walk off the mat? Can you walk out of the gym? Can you get off the bike? And can you tell yourself that you put forth your best effort consciously, knowingly? And that's the difference between athletes, I think.
Yeah, I it's definitely, all these things that we've talked about is what create a better athlete, you know, because there's some days, it's rare when I've gone in and I just like thrown in the towel sooner than I should have, and I walk away and I don't feel too good about it, but I walk away, you know. And then I realized I had a really big emotional burden from something outside of the gym, and I was like, you know, so yes, I still did the best effort. I got there, I warmed up, and I walked away, because I that was the best I could do, because I had this shit going on or whatever. But I love just evaluating. I mean, I'm very analytical of all of that stuff, and I love looking back at the time frame. I've been consistently working out for so long, I can look back at all the data, and it's just enjoying what I do and being safe and having fun and pushing hard, all the above. And I'm getting better, and that feeds my soul, you know. From that athletic side of things, that's important. So so it's that whole side of things is really good, you know. And when I don't, I'll go off and I'll do something else, and people go, well, you were so good at CrossFit, why don't you keep going? You did. It's because I didn't enjoy it anymore, and now I'm like playing
pickleball,
you know, pickleball, whatever, you know. And I'll want to be really good at pickleball, you know, and I'll smash it. But
I think it's you could write a little keys to a healthy life, how to age the right way, or anti-age. But I'm
in a good place right now. I love it. I get to see you kids flourish and blossom, you know, and I see parts of me in each of you, and I see parts where you've made specific changes to not be like me, you know. I'm like, and that's all part of it, and I'm cool with it. And I'm supportive, and I love where my life is. And I don't have kids to raise right now, other than the phone call for advice or whatever. It just comes in randomly, but it's good. I'm loving it.
Well, I love you. I've really appreciated we're coming up on 2 hours as I expected we would. It's been awesome talking with you. We'll do this again 100%. There's so many stones that were left unturned. So,
Oh God, yeah, we can drill down deep on any one of 10 of them for 2 hours.
But yeah, love you, Dad. Thank you so much. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, thank you, Abe. Love you.